Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, April 4th, 2025. I'm David Menzies and my co-host, but let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know, folks, today is National Hug a News Person Day? And I am not going to do that with my co-host. I mean, look at her. Just look at her. How could I possibly stop at a hug? She is the she-devil with a special S. She is the Khaleesi of BC. She is the fantastic Drea Humphrey. How you doing there, Drea?
Good. See, it's a good thing we don't have HR because you just never know what's going to happen. No, I am doing good. Glad to be back here. I guess Friday's the day where we do the talk of the town, and it is just gorgeous. I mean, out here in beautiful British Columbia, where I am in the Lower Mainland, we've had a pretty good winter, but spring is in full bloom right now, so I'm loving that. Yeah.
I must be making you uncomfortable. You changed the subject to the weather, for goodness sakes. But you know what? We don't have HR. But before I got on the show, true story, I went up to our beloved boss man, Ezra Levent, and I said, hey, boss, since you run the company, it is National Hug a News Person Day. Am I allowed to go around hugging the female news persons? And Ezra said, hug that. And he pointed to the coat rack. So I kind of picked up the nuance there, Drea.
That's funny. I can't believe there's an actual Hug a News Person Day, but I'm here for it. I love hugs. All through COVID, when I covered those protests, I was hugging everybody and nothing was happening. I did get COVID eventually in 2022, but not during all those lockdown protests with all those hugs.
I'm not a big hug guy, Drea. One thing I'd love is to appropriate from Japanese culture, because it's so sanitary and it's so classy, is, the bow when you meet someone. I don't want to touch people's hands. I don't want to hug people. It's just, can we not appropriate that part of Japanese culture moving forward? It's basically a career approving measure for me to do,
as long as
just in case, right?
As long as you're not touching elbows, you're good. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, or maybe just need a refresher, this is the Rebel Roundup, where we bring you the latest and most current news of the day, totally unscripted, which is my favorite part about it. And my also favorite part about it is that you can be a part of that as well. The best way to do so, or one of the best ways to do so, is join us on YouTube. We actually got our monetization back after years of being punished for telling you the other side of the story. That's right. So you can actually send us a super chat now on YouTube and do a comment. And if you donate there, I think it's $5 or more. We try to make sure that's part of the show. So sometimes you guys break news as well, or just give your opinions. And also, of course, that helps keep the lights on at Real News, helps keeps us with our boots on the ground, excuse me, to give you reports you can trust. And then if you're watching this after it's live, which many people do, you can actually send a super thanks as well, which we really appreciate. The other way, if you want to go visit our friends at Rumble, who have supported free speech and allowed us to tell you the other side of the story over and over and over without censoring us, then please do send us a Rumble Rat. Same idea. You donate there and we make that part of the show. So thank you so much for your support. Back to you, David.
Drea, I'm just experiencing technical difficulties with my earpiece, so I'm going to try to channel my inner Clark Kent and use my super hearing while we try to fix this. But luckily, our opener, it's with Mr. Carney, and he was asked a question on the CBC if he will stop buying American strawberries. Folks, you're not going to believe the answer. Check this out.
Est-ce que vous en achetez encore des produits américains? Est-ce que vous achetez des fraises des États-Unis? Vous envoyez fraises des États-Unis? Hein?
OK. Je dois vous donner une réponse bizarre, dans un sens bizarre, parce que étant Premier ministre, je n'achète plus des fraises et tout cela. Quelqu'un le fait.
Yeah, why do I believe that, Drea? What decade was it that Mark Carney was last in a no-frills store? I mean, I don't do that. I'm way too important for that. I have these people. You might know of them. They're called servants. They do all the nitty-gritty day-to-day business. I mean, Drea, have you ever seen a statement verbatim coming out of Carney's mouth that really, really validates his previous descriptor of himself as a globalist and an elitist?
No, absolutely not. And he's not even trying to fake it. I mean, he just tells it like it is. If we actually vote in this elitist, this central banker in bed with the WEF, like what does that say about Canadians? Because he does not hide how much of elite he is. And when I say he doesn't even pretend it, I'm thinking of that image of Trudeau after he was out. Did you see him in the grocery store? And the only thing in his cart was a cucumber and Vaseline. It was very awkward. But, he's trying to be like, hey, I'm normal and I'm still relevant. Don't forget about me. Carney's just like, yeah, no, I can't answer that question. It's up to the servants what they decide to do with my strawberries. How concerning is that?
It's unbelievable. But you know what? On one hand, Drea, I want to thank Mr. Carney for truth in advertising, for being honest that he's far beyond shopping with regular schlubs like you and I and members of our audience in a supermarket. Ooh, what's that? I'm used to getting served upon. I still want to know if, because we haven't had this question answered, if he was served upon at Epstein Island. We know there are photos of him rubbing shoulders with Miss Maxwell, but it's really something. And that Trudeau photo op you're speaking of, that was a few weeks ago. And it was bizarre. He was at, I think the one you're talking about, he's at Canadian Tire and he's wearing a ball cap and a denim jacket and he's got a little basket. And it's like, hey guys, just like you, I'm shopping at a Canadian Tire and the needle on my BS detector, Drea, went firmly into the red zone because first of all, I'm looking at the photo. There's not a single staffer or other customer. I mean, this Canadian Tire, it made the hotel overlook from The Shining look like Grand Central Station at rush hour. And meanwhile, out of range of his selfie stick, and I think super producer Olivia has the photo. There you go. Look at that. It's a haunted house. And out of range of that selfie stick, Drea, are RCMP bodyguards ready to make a mess on aisle 5 in case any schlub comes over to the anointed one. But here's my question. What was the point? Justin Trudeau is yesterday's man. We've moved on. His own party has moved on. Yeah. Why is he doing that? Is he just such a narcissist? He can't stay out of the public spotlight?
Ding, ding, ding. And I just realized I was duped. I mean, mind you, I just saw it on X. It's not like I did a report. I do my research when I do my report. Obviously, I must have saw an edited one, which had the cucumber and Vaseline in the cart. This is obviously the real picture. But yeah, he's trying to stay relevant. And back to Carney and the strawberries for just a second. They say that the devil hides in plain sight, and that's what I'm feeling like we're hearing there. I mean, as we know, when our very own Avi Yemeni questioned him in Davos, he said, you shouldn't be asking a central banker for political advice. I mean, he just said that when he came here to Kamloops. He told, not Kamloops, sorry, Kelowna, he told British Columbians that he's going to be using emergency powers to address the tariff threats. I mean, he's in office, but he's not really in office yet as we focus on the election. And he's already talking about being an authoritarian.
And Drea, great point. And this gives grist for the mill, I think, of why this is the shortest election campaign they can go for. Clearly, the strategy of Team Carney is let's get this over and done with as fast as possible. The more we can prevent Carney from saying something stupid or saying something elitist, the better. I think that's part of it. The other part, they looked at what Doug Ford did in the month of February in a brutal winter, and it paid off for Doug Ford in getting yet another supermajority in Ontario. And they probably believe the poll numbers. Me, I don't. I'm taking those numbers with a shovelful of salt. But I think that's the reason we have a super short campaign. And but as we can see, there's still ample opportunity for Carney to screw up. I think that was a major screw up. The only thing missing was Chrystia Freeland not rushing in and saying, "Oh no, what he meant to say," because it's in French. He didn't mean to say the little people buy his strawberries for him. Some other excuse. One last thing before we go on to what's happening at McGill. Best strawberries joke I know, Drea. It's courtesy of the greatest comedy trio of all time. I speak of the Three Stooges. They're on death row. They're all about to be hanged. And the warden comes over to them and says, "Any last requests?" And they go, "Yes, can we have a bowl of strawberries?" And the warden gets really mad and he goes, "Strawberries? Strawberries won't be in season for 6 months." And they go in unison, "We'll wait."
That's too funny.
Anyway, so why don't we go to this is happening on so many campuses, but there are some campuses where it is even worse than others. Clearly, Montreal, there is a flavor for anti-Semitism that is off the charts in Canada. I mean, at U of T last summer, they occupied King's College Circle for 3 months, I believe it was. But
See you.
and say exactly. But here at McGill, it is actually an unsafe space for Jews and for those who support Israel. The pro-Hamas faction is really taking over. Why don't we show this clip and check out the carnage firsthand? Can you imagine? Drea, a couple of points. This sort of garbage is happening at U.S. universities too. I don't think for much longer, given how Donald Trump feels about this. And you see the likes of Berkeley, Columbia, telling Jewish students that, can we just pretend it's the COVID days and you learn remotely, because, these people hate you and we really don't want to do too much pushback against them. I think that's despicable. And I'm sure the Montreal Police Service has, tear gas, water cannons. If that's what has to be used, then use it.
I think there's just so much concerning about seeing this inside of a school. Like, it is completely unacceptable that society as a whole isn't in a complete uproar about this happening. Have we become so desensitized that we think on some level this is okay? You're right. This should be shut down immediately. It is a complete safety risk. And whatever happened to standing against hate? I thought these universities, they spent so much time talking about hate and racism, and yet this happens and suddenly it's okay.
Oh, Drea, when it comes to hate, you're probably talking about something really serious, like misgendering someone, like calling 300-pound bearded Bubba he, him, when you didn't know it's now a she, her. Then the university will get into high gear. They'll practically demand a royal commission on transphobia. Yeah. But little Jew hatred, you know what? Boys will be boys. It is despicable. And I think we have another clip looking at no less than 2 lines of police officers to keep the wannabe jihadis away from the Jews on McGill. I can't believe this is Canada in 2025, but it is. You know, Drea, I can only imagine what a survivor of the Holocaust, and there's fewer and fewer with every passing year. I can only imagine what they think when they see this, because Montreal in 2025 or Berlin in 1938, I can't tell the difference sometimes. This is despicable, and it screams of the lack of leadership. Our politicians, they will get up in front of a microphone and they will say, this is deplorable, there is no room for hate, and then they won't do anything to rein it in other than put up a physical line of police officers. This is shameful.
Well, and we know when it gets ignored, it becomes as accepted to certain
Yep.
people. It includes actual extremists who do worse and worse things as they feel like, again, society is giving them sort of this cahoots, pats on the back. I mean, we see that with like the church is burning as one example, where it just gets worse and worse and worse, or even what's happening with the Teslas right now. That's why you have to shut this stuff down immediately so that there isn't a precedent set that this is okay. These are young people trying to get an education, trying to further, be a productive part of society. And especially if you're Jewish, and I don't even think it's just the Jews who are scared, but of course, if you're Jewish, you have to do so in fear.
100%. And, Drea, I kind of look at, you go to a national park and you'll see signs, don't feed the animals. These pro-Hamas animals continue to push the envelope. And the reason is because we allow them to. We see every weekend in cities in Canada and across the world, the jihadis going to even predominantly Jewish neighborhoods, and they chant for genocide, and they display swastikas, and they have people dressing up as Sinwar, the mastermind of October 7th. It's only a matter of time before they have some guy cosplaying Hitler. You mark my words. And nothing's done. I mean, when back in December in Toronto, when a Jewish girls' school got shot up for the third time in 9 months, one of the cops doing the press conference, I brought up all these situations that we see in Toronto, at least at Bathurst and Shepherd. Why isn't this against Section 319 of the Criminal Code? Why is this not a hate crime? And he said some convoluted answer. Well, there's some nuance here. Nuance? Are you kidding me?
Wow. It's ridiculous. Apparently my camera's shaky, so sorry, I was trying to figure that out.
Oh, thank goodness. I thought you were having an earthquake.
Oh, I see it. I'm totally delayed. Okay, I'll try to figure that out. But I will just take this opportunity to read out a super chat. And for those tuning in now, that is one of the ways on YouTube you can be a part of the show with a donation of $5 or more, or you can do a Rumble rant on Rumble. And so this is from Ryerson Gary, a common supporter. Thank you so much. Donates $5 and says, Jordan Peterson says women are happier when they get a hug every day. Wow, I could see that. Sure.
Wow. The only problem is, I'll be honest, and forgive me, I just tend to get aroused, right, when I'm hugging women. So, you know what?
God, David, don't use that word.
It's very embarrassing. I'm biologically hardwired, Drea. For goodness sakes, don't you understand? I'm waiting for my Viagra years to kick in. I'm not there yet. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh, HR.
I can't even have an honest conversation. But thank you, Ryerson Gary, for that donation.
Yeah, thank you for what it led to as well.
All right. So, speaking on policing, isn't this amazing, Drea? In fact, I'm surprised the number is so low. Toronto police have spent nearly $20 million to deploy officers to protests related to the Israel-Hamas war. Drea, I know they won't do this, but what I'd like to see the Toronto Police Service do, or the City of Toronto, their overloads, what if we send a bill to, Iran for this, maybe George Soros, because these are the entities fueling this garbage. Imagine where $20 million could have been spent in the city of Toronto in this economy, with homelessness the way it is, with food banks in the last 5 years going up quintuple, 5 times more than in 2020. And yet we have to get the cops out to be the babysitters for these thugs chanting genocide. I think that is absolutely tragic.
That is so much money during a time where we are so desperate for help in so many ways. I think, I think it's happening across Canada, but one of the things Polyev always points out is the increase in people going to the food bank, for example, and the food banks, like he said, running out of food. And here we are spending $20 million on something like this. And one of the things I have asked, anti-Israel protesters, every time I do interview them, is like, what exactly do you want Canadians to do? Like, it's going on so long. Like, what is it you want? And there's not much of an answer there.
No, there isn't. I think they're disruptors. I think what we are seeing is the strange bedfellows of Islamists and Marxists getting together. I think the ultimate goal, Drea, because like you said, Canada can't do anything when it comes to the conflicts in the Middle East. The ultimate goal is to tear down society, to normalize abhorrent behavior. This is what they want. They're basically anarchists at the end of the day. And this is what we're getting. But my friend, I think we have to take a hard break here for an ad read. So we will come back with, it's one of your stories about a certain MLA in your neck of the woods being branded a racist. Oh, you won't believe why. She's just talking the truth, folks. But let's go to our ad break and we'll see you on the other side.
Hey, do you remember how the media party talked about our Canadian flag during the Freedom Convoy of the truckers? They hated it. They hated them singing our anthem. These are the same people who stripped John A. Macdonald off the $10 bill. But now that Mark Carney is campaigning against Trump's tariffs, suddenly Canadian patriotism is cool again? I mean, look at this.
Everyone sees the main threat as the Trump tariffs. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. Because when we are united, we are Canada strong.
Funny how that works, but I didn't need tariffs or approval from politicians to stand with Canada. You know, I've been a flag-waving patriot for a while, including when the truckers went to Ottawa. Still am now. That's why we just launched a new merch line called I Didn't Need Tariffs to Start Loving Canada. I like this one with the trucker protest imagery. It reminds me that these now proud, woke liberal Canadians that, well, they're a bit late to the party, and I don't believe them, by the way. Get yours now at rebelnewsstore.com.
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
So, Drea, maybe you should take the lead on this. It is your story. Maybe we should throw to the video because this is new news for me, folks. You can say the truth and you'll be branded a racist. Unbelievable. Let's check out the story of MLA Dallas Brody.
I have publicly stated that the number of confirmed burials at the former residential school in Kamloops is 0. This is the truth. A fact that the Kamloops Band itself also admits, and a fact that the Chief Justice of British Columbia has also confirmed in the case of Regina and Dirk last year. As a lawyer and an arbitrator for over 30 years, I have relied on facts my whole professional life. However, the First Nations Leadership Council, one of the most powerful lobby groups in British Columbia, is now calling for me to be imprisoned on the basis of that factual statement. Imprisoned.
Question, member.
Mr. Speaker, will the Premier defund the First Nations Leadership Council and denounce every group that is advocating to criminalize the true statements of Canadian citizens?
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say, I think on behalf of most members in this House that I very much regret that that's a question that member. Just the other day, we screened the movie Sugarcane, and we got to see a little bit of the history of what residential school survivors have faced in this province, in this country. We got to see the pain, but most of all, what we got to see was their search for the truth. For us, with a very simple request to us, support them, help them, tell their stories and uncover the truth of what happened at residential school. And we all need to do that, Mr. Speaker. This member has been speaking very vocally in a very damaging way to survivors, and I want to speak directly to survivors right now. We believe you. We are there for you. We will support you in understanding what happened and being there to make sure we all understand the truth of what happened at residential school. Mr. Speaker, I was a lawyer for many years on the front lines with survivors and their claims going forward, and I saw how hard it was for them to get their stories believed and heard through the justice system. This member has repeatedly called upon us to deny the course that the Law Society is teaching lawyers. That is an important thing for us to uphold in this House. I know that the members across the way and a lot of us in this House support me in condemning that question and standing by survivors, and I hope we would all stand to do that.
Member has supplemental.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I can go toe-to-toe with any lawyer. I did work with Aboriginal children for 7 years as a young offender defense attorney, perhaps even spent more time doing that work than any of you. Mr. Speaker, my questions are not about feelings, they are about facts. Does the Premier have a list of facts that British Columbians must not speak lest they be put in jail? Or should I request that list from his good friends at the First Nations Leadership Council?
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I won't repeat what I said, but I will say I would hope that that member would use their power and privilege of sitting in this House to support survivors and help find the truth instead of what's happening right now.
So, Drea, it seems to me we've reached a new odious benchmark in terms of political correctness and wokeness, and that is if the truth hurts, one dare not speak it, which is actually the very definition of political correctness. Drea, you've covered the story very well. What's really going on here?
Literally, there is so much to unpack. I'll start with saying, boy, did they mess with the wrong politician with Dallas Brody. If those of you don't know the background of what happened, maybe you're not in British Columbia or what have you, but our Conservative Party of British Columbia, Dallas Brody was serving as the critic to the Attorney General, who you just saw Nikki Sharma respond. She was serving there And in that duty of being the critic to the Attorney General, she spoke out about how there is a lawsuit from lawyers who are being, one in particular, Jim Heller, who's been smeared as a residential school denier for simply wanting the accurate phrasing in the mandatory training for lawyers in British Columbia that is still claiming that 215 children's remains were discovered at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School, something we debunked in our documentary 3 years ago and questioned immediately in my first report from the grounds there about how that was even possible to say with GPR. And so in that capacity, she called it out and she got these calls to be let go. And unfortunately, if you look up my report, what happened to John Rustad, who's the leader of that party, and why did he lie about Dallas Brody, you'll see that he caved. He caved to the identity politics, kicked her out, and then two MLAs, the couple of claps behind her followed. Now, what is so scary about this is she is pointing out that there are calls to criminalize the accurate speech that she did, which is just say that there have been zero bodies and, why is the Law Society avoiding that? That calls to criminalize that type of speech, including my reports, is not anything new, but now it's going straight to elected officials, which we've saw in Quesnel, BC too. So it's a very serious thing. And then you have the Attorney General, who admittedly was a lawyer for many years, wanting residential school disinformation to continue to the lawyers. She twists the reality to the public and claims that MLA Dallas Brody is calling for the whole course to be, gone entirely. No, they are calling for the truth to be had. But something that should be said is out of the 12 hours of mandatory training that you need to keep up your license or whatever you would call it as a lawyer, 50% of that is focused on Indigenous matters. So out of all of the things to do with law, it is disproportional that 50% is mandatory. And when you call out disinformation in that mandatory course, you are smeared as a residential school denier. And there are calls from lobby groups like the First Nation Leadership Council to actually have you criminalized. So I actually have an interview coming up with Miss Dallas Brody that you're not going to want to miss. That's a very good interview. But I also have an exclusive interview with a Kamloops band member coming up because Nikki Sharma, who claims that she's standing for the residential school survivors, is also avoiding the fact that there are people who attended residential schools and have a different take. They don't even consider themselves survivors. So that will be proven as well. And it's not to diminish bad things that happen. Nobody is denying residential schools or that horrible things happen or that it was horrible for the students and families that were taken unwillingly from parents. There are many parents who signed up their children. No one is disputing any of that, but enough is enough. It's time to stand for reality. And if our MLAs are getting kicked out of parties for shedding light on stuff like this, it just shows how serious of an issue this is, let alone the 248 churches that have burnt since that false 2021 claim.
It's terrifying to me in a way because anyone that's in law, you think, Drea, they would subscribe to the whole concept of Madam Justice, the statue with the scales in one hand, the sword in the other, but most importantly, the blindfold, that everything is judged on its own merits. It's all about evidence. It's not about feelings. And this idea that they're going after her to criminalize factual statements, it just brings to mind, near the ending of 1984, when Winston Smith is at the Ministry of Love, which is the last place you want to be because it's actually the torture chamber, and he's being interrogated, and it's, how many fingers, Winston? And he says 3 because it is 3, and he's tortured because the answer they want is 4. And then when he says 4, he's tortured again because, you see, Winston, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4, and sometimes it's 5. It's like the truth is fluid. And this is what we're seeing here. This is a woman calling out a hoax. There are, the Chief Justice has called it out. Band members have called it out. and yet she is supposed to censor herself and go along with this lie? That's incredible to me.
Well, and let's not forget the millions upon millions of tax dollars that have gone out to the Kamloops band with the intention for them to properly investigate, including excavation, which they did not do. And the bands that, we heard, we have unmarked graves, we have unmarked graves, we have unmarked graves. Not a single body has ever been discovered, except for the bands that said, rightfully so, we have a graveyard here, and there's a mix of people that were buried there, and there it was marked. But over time, the wooden crosses broke down, and we'd like some money about that. Anybody who had sort of a nefarious claim, 0 bodies. And out of the 14 or so who have excavated, they don't say nothing. There's a few articles. Nobody makes a big deal out of these huge falsehoods that our Attorney General, Nikki Sharma, wants to just be taken as fact without evidence. And it's a full circle moment. So we've talked about how the BC Conservatives kicked out Dallas Brody after the backlash for this. But in previous reports, I've explained how much of, or a significant part of the rise to that party has to do with Aaron Gunn. He's a documentarian who was running for leadership with the BC Liberals, which was led by Kevin Falcon, now called BC United. And when he was running for that, he was canceled out of that party for so-called, going against the politically correct narrative of residential schools. So John Rosted knows that history because after that, Aaron Gunn was very influential in helping that party, get to where it is, and other people as well. And he did not stand for the truth with Dallas Brody. And now look what's happening. I've covered many people, professionals, who are getting canceled this way. Even a Supreme Court judge was called a residential school denier. But now we have Aaron Gunn from North Island, a very promising candidate who's running again for politics, as he should. He's got a knack for it, for the federal Conservative parties. And the same groups calling to go after MLA Dallas Brody are now coming for him for a 2020 tweet that he did. So you can see this article with Czech News. They're calling for him to come down. If you scroll down a little bit, I think the actual 2020 tweet is in there. But essentially, he says something along the lines of, he refutes in 2020 that it was a genocide, that the residential school system was a genocide. Now, remember what genocide actually means. Remember that so far these unmarked grave claims are not actually manifesting hundreds of missing children, which, by the way, that amount was never reported missing from the school. And even in the Truth and Reconciliation report, it does not say genocide. It says cultural genocide. Big difference. But after these false claims came out, or unproven claims, what did our parliament do? Unanimously, the Conservative Party as well, all stood in favor of, calling them, our country now calls this a genocide, without the conclusive evidence of such. Much of it is oral testimonies, and that's actually paved the way for the UN to get its hands on this situation, which is a whole other story. You can find out all of my reports, or most of them, at kamloopsdocumentary.com, and you can donate to help my investigations on this too, because I don't think Canadians realize how significant of an issue this is and what it's all connected to when it comes to government overreach, because remember, First Nation bands are governments.
Well, if the UN is denouncing it, that carries so much weight, doesn't it, Drea? This is the same UN, I take it, that was hiring a Hamas employees that were actually trying to engage in a real genocide of the Jewish people. Incredible. Before we move on from this subject, one last thing, because it should be noted, when Miss Sharma was criticizing Miss Brody, and her body of evidence to justify that there was a mass grave there, she mentioned the documentary Sugarcane. Drea, what do we know about Sugarcane?
Well, I have to give credits to Michelle. And again, you can find information about this at our website. Michelle Sterling, you can look up her on X. She did a great job. Again, just wanting the full story to be told. And she points out much of the misinformation in that documentary. So Michelle Sterling is her name. You can find her on X and you will very easily, she's got a couple of articles about it where it really just, again, points out the truth. Things are just being said with no evidence. Things are contradicting evidence that we have in historical documents. And yet you have our legislator screening it as though it's fact to all of the political leaders inside of the actual legislator. They are screening residential disinformation. And that's not to say that everything isn't true. And one other thing we should quickly say is that Aaron Gunn has responded, of course, to the second go around of trying to smear him as a racist. He's certainly not a racist. And he points out all of the things that he has done, all of the times that he has, spoken out against bad things that happened in the residential school and who he's sort of interviewed about these things in his documentaries. So again, it's just a trumped up situation to try to get out a strong candidate, but they keep using this same narrative about anybody who says anything true about residential schools. Scratch that. Anybody who says anything like Mark Carney's father,
Yes,
who, if you pull up my article there, was the principal at an Indian day school in the Northwest Territories, a well-respected historian who documented the good things about residential school from firsthand experience, and he also talked about some bad stuff that happened too. But yet nobody, with people, the Quesnel, BC mayor had protest calls and was censured because his wife handed out a book that had unpopular truths on residential schools. A mayor, an elected official. Yet no one from the mainstream media or these cancel culture mobsters with the First Nation Leadership Council are calling Mark Carney even the descendant of a so-called residential school denier. It is such a bias. And so we have to stop falling for these tactics of racism or residential school denialism to try to censor truth and to try to further political advantages.
Drea, hypothetical question for you. If it were Pierre Poilievre's father that was tied to an Indian day school, what kind of coverage are we seeing? Is it still on the front page today, perhaps?
No, of course. They would not stop talking about this. And the fact that they are not talking about that, my article talks about how he's perhaps avoiding Indigenous media. They've done a couple of articles on it, but even they're not drawing the connection. They're just saying favorable things. So it's ridiculous.
And speaking of Carney and the media, why don't we hop to this one? It's a perfect segue. Carney defending the Liberals spending more than $1 billion per year. I think what is it, up to $1.4 billion now, Drea? Because the CBC, wait for it, folks, it's a crucial source of information. Check this out.
Across the country, Canadians rely on CBC Radio Canada. From Schitt's Creek to Hockey Night in Canada and Mike Myers, these are products of Canada. They're the result of strong, representative public broadcasting. CBC Radio Canada is especially vital for Canadians in rural and remote areas where it's often their only source of local information. Canadians rely on it to keep up with what's happening, and when disasters happen, such as forest fires, floods, or storms that threaten their communities, public broadcasting is crucial as a vital source of information to help people to stay safe. We also count on public broadcasting to discover up-and-coming Canadian musicians, creators, storytellers, whose work might otherwise get buried by the avalanche of American content on social media.
Drea, does Mark Carney need a calendar? I mean, I think those words might have been relevant in, 1945, but in 2025, because see, along the line in that timeline, this little thing came along called the internet, and now we have conduits for remote areas for the internet, like Starlink. Oh, but of course that's tied to Elon Musk, and he's persona non grata on the left. I mean, what an unfortunate example to give right off the hop of why we need CBC. Schitt's Creek. Well, you got half of that word correct, Mr. Carney. And also when he dovetails to Mike Myers, his new Hollywood best friend, I might be wrong, but I can't remember in recent memory Mike Myers being on any CBC program, unless CBC is playing old Austin Powers movies. What is he talking about? Mike Myers, like Carney, has 3 passports and he lives in the U.S.
Yes, that's the thing. Yeah. It's so great in Canada that you don't live here, you don't have your businesses here. We get it. But yeah, out of all the famous people, it's kind of like, I like a lot of people, especially the younger ones. I don't even know if they know who he is. But the CBC, if everything he says is true, okay, let the people decide. Stop taking our tax dollars and funding that. Let's just see what happens. Do people want to subscribe to them or not? Just like we have to deal with, right? We'll see what happens.
You know what, Drea? You nailed it. If the CBC is so crucial and it is so needed and it is so important and it is so beloved, then why not adopt, the funding model for Rebel News? Mm-hmm. Make a donation. Because obviously, if it is important and loved and crucial and all that other stuff, then you couldn't live without it. So you would dig into your own pockets. I wonder if it went to that model, right, Drea? How much money do you think the CBC would raise in a calendar year? Do you think it might be under or over $1.4 billion?
Well, it would certainly be under. I think for a while there, we'd see some of the more woke businesses, donate. But what people don't understand, it's not even just the money that they directly receive. It's also the money they receive in ads. Like, especially if you look at ads that play in British Columbia, you'll see that the provincial government is predominantly behind almost all of the ads that are playing on the news outlets. So that's another way that it's like, we can't bite the hand that feeds us. They're sponsoring, all of our ad breaks to talk about this and that. So the system is so tangled. And of course, that's when propaganda can have its strength.
But you raise a great point there about the advertisers, Drea, because not only does the CBC get $1.4 billion, as part of its annual budget, but if it's government agencies and bureaucracies advertising on the CBC, that's double dipping, because who funds these government agencies and bureaucracies? It is the taxpayer, correct?
Exactly. So, I am going to do a little read. Speaking of sponsors, this was a good segue. This is one of our brave sponsors to work with, Rebel News, so that's a good thing. And be naked. This is the beginning of it. In today's society, it's tough to be a man in a world dominated by overly masculine liberal women. That's just not how it's meant to be. That's actually biblical. Look at it, what it says in end times. Okay, I'm going to move on. Everywhere we look, it's gender neutral. This product or made for her, that product. That is why we started a company that embodies the ethos of men's lives matter too, with products that aren't designed to be gender neutral or used by people with pronouns, or products at Rumble. Our products at Rumble are designed and built for men by men, period. So if you struggle with low energy, mood swings, or hair loss, or you need to perform better at the gym, maybe in bed, as those of you know who've been tuning in, apparently David the Menzoid Menzies doesn't need that, but maybe other people. I don't know why I know this information. You guys do now. Continuing on. And so maybe in bed and recover quicker after. Throw out all your other garbage supplements and try animal organs. They are traditionally the most nutrient-rich supplements on the planet, but our bison organs are a step above. The grass-fed, non-vaccinated bison are a species where the weak are allowed to die and only the strongest survive. So here is our commitment to you from men who have real confidence in their products. Try this today, and if you don't like it, fine, return it for a refund. Go to benaked.com, code STUDIO, and get 15% off today. Again, that's benaked.com, code STUDIO, and get 15% off.
Well, we're really getting into our red zone. Be naked on this National Hug a News Person Day. I'll leave it at that. But, to this idea of canceling toxic masculinity, I remember more than 5 years ago, I did a rant on this, Drea. It was Kleenex dropping one of their brands or formats, I should say, called man-size Kleenex, because suddenly this was offensive, I don't know, to some transgender or something like that. And you know what? Well, if you wanted to move the needle Kleenex, you did, because I don't buy Kleenex, and I call it as I see it, Drea. I think the best brand of Kleenex or tissues is Kleenex. The ultra soft brand, there's nothing softer. But yeah, to literally, I guess I'm cutting off my nose to spite my face. But when I see this kind of bending the knee, it gets me going the other way. It gets me going into boycott mode. And because we have to wrap this up too sharp, and because, well, I mentioned transgender, and here we have something in your wheelhouse again, Drea. BC Tribunal awards $7,500 to trans-identifying individual offended by a meme depicting them as masculine. Drea, me being a bear of very little brain, I am so confused just reading the headline. What's going on here?
Well, you talked about the war on men, and that's a real thing. There's also a war on women, in my opinion. And these examples are a prime example. A woman is now a hairy man in a child's bikini. True story. True story out here in British Columbia. So, where have the women gone? This is a very concerning ruling out of the civil tribunal. And so basically this person has come out and accused somebody who did what I'm calling a meme. The mainstream media called it an anti-trans, photo or something like that. But it's essentially a meme. Somebody did a picture of them, like their head, and which happens to me all the time as a Rebel News reporter, by the way. Like, people put my face on weird things, and they just put it on a more masculine body. Like, they kind of made them look more masculine than I'm assuming they already do. Now, unfortunately, there's a publication ban on here. I can't talk about who. I'm not even sure technically who, because I didn't sit through this. I heard about it after the fact. I did read the ruling, and the judge basically said that it caused harm. There was harm associated with sharing the image, and it does not come from anything particularly explicit in the graphic. So from everything that I read, the graphic wasn't like indecent or anything like that, but that it's harmful because it was dehumanizing. And apparently the judge also spoke about how in there, the complainant was against BT, I will call that person, did misgender AQ quite a few times. Now, the judge is not the right word, I don't think, actually. No. The vice chair, sorry.
The kangaroo.
The vice chair of the kangaroo court. They also pointed out that when AQ wanted to have, I think it was $25,000 for like the time spent on doing the application and everything, the chair said, well, a lot of time was wasted because you used AI so much to do your documents that it included false things and just like needless case things that had like nothing to do. So basically they said, no, you're not having 25,000, but they did rule, I think it was 2,500. So a total of $7,500 this person got essentially for a meme. If you could even call it that meme.
Well, Dre, the way I look at it, this is someone who is potentially mentally ill, gaming the system, and the system acquiescing to the gaming. And what's really disturbing is that I thought concepts like parody were protected. And I'm talking about whether it's a satire in Mad Magazine or a political cartoonist, using extreme examples to make his case. Does this set a precedent that you better watch out because some kook out there might take you to a human rights tribunal?
We keep seeing this over and over, and I think you're absolutely right. Free speech, freedom of expression is a two-tier system in our country, unfortunately, especially when it comes to these activist-led tribunals, which, by the way, I will let you guys know, if you don't already know, we are being dragged through the BC Human Rights Tribunal by a violent trans activist named Jessica Simpson, better known as Jonathan Yaniv, who is calling our fact-based reports hate. And within the British Columbia BC Human Rights Code, Section 7 says that you can't publish something that could lead to a protected person to having people have contempt against them. So if this person was sexually inappropriate with minors, which they were, and we talk about that, and you find contempt for that person or you're angry at that person respectfully, apparently that is hate. So please support the thousands of dollars we've already had to spend. I think we're at 10,000 just preparing for this. We would really appreciate your donations because we will not back down on exposing anything, any injustice like this. And this person has been racist to me and threatened my family. Nobody cares about that. So please go to stopyaniv.com and donate what you can to help us with those growing legal expenses.
Well, Drea, I do care about that. You shouldn't be threatened nor your family. But and with all due respect, my friend, you got off easy. When I was in BC to scrum him, this guy on camera, 2 cameras no less, smashed a steel cane over my head and shoulders 5 times. And the Mountie said, hey, nothing we can do. One law for thee, one law for me. The transgenders are clearly a protected political or cultural class, whatever you want to call them. And it is a double standard and it's despicable. We have to stand up to these kind of reprobates because I'm done with it. I just wish the authorities, whether it was law enforcement or human rights tribunals, which I believe should be abolished, didn't give, look at this monster, these kind of people a platform. Got a big dog now, too. Unbelievable. I guess the cane has gone out of fashion. Well, Drea, we have to wrap it here, my friend. That was a really quick hour. The big boss man needs the studio. So thank you so much for subbing in for Sheila Gunn Reid, who is busy on assignment. And thank you to those who made a super chat. Greatly appreciated. Unlike the CBC, we don't get $1.4 billion. Yeah. We don't even get $1.40 from the federal government, nor would we accept it if offered. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank God it's TGIF, as I like to say, on a Friday. In the meantime, on this National Hug a News Person Day, I think I'll go and hug the coat rack, which Ezra has given me permission for to do. Hopefully that won't arouse me. I will be back here on Monday with Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, folks, have a great weekend. And as always, stay safe and stay sane.
What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus' call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase.